Hello and welcome to a new episode of Oh My God, It's Hot in Here.
And
Fundraisers on film.
Fundraisers on film. Fundraisers on
Fundraisers-
fire. That's what we
Fundraisers
should
on
call
fire.
ourselves for this
Yeah.
episode.
Not because we've had a good idea, no, just we're on fire. It's hot.
Literal fire. It is, 20,000 degrees? I think I've just made it to the entrance of Hades. Is boiling.
It's too hot. So this week, we're not going to complain about the weather or
No,
how
because I love
hot it is. We've
sunshine.
done that. We're sorted with that. We're actually going to talk about sport films. Or more
Sports.
relevantly sport films. Emma sent a message 6 weeks ago or whatever it was saying, could we do spot films? I was like, yeah, let's do spot films. I was Googling spot films, whatever they are.
Just like a very, very niche avant-garde style of cinema.
Yeah,
I'm
sure.
still up for doing spot films. I reckon we can make a whole episode out of films that have some very tenuous relationship to
Spots. Yeah.
spots.
I was totally on board. I took it as face value. Is that what you wanted to do? And I was like, yeah. Apparently
Yeah,
not.
sign me up.
Yeah,
Sign me up.
But we're talking about sport films today. We're keeping in theme with keeping in theme. You know, we've just finished the Euros. The Olympics is on the way tomorrow, actually. And the Lions tour is on. That starts on Saturday. Well, the first test. So lots of sport happening. It's summer of sport. It's good. And we're going to talk about some sport films. I don't like sport films. I'm just going to throw it out there. They're not.
And I don't like sports.
So we kind of thought there's a tedious link. I love
With the
sport.
yin and yang.
Yes, I love sport. Can't get enough of sport as a real life, watch it, experience, live, love it. NFL, football, rugby league, love it. Went to Wembley last week, watched Saints lift the trophy, and you cannot replicate that. And when I watch a sport film, it's not the same. I can't replicate that, man. Yeah.
I like doing sports. I like sporting activities.
Yes.
But I hate watching sports, except running. I like watching I like watching the London Marathon each year, and I like watching the time trials. But I would say that's probably the only examples I have of sports that I'd like to watch. But yeah, I didn't watch the whatever it was called, the football. I didn't watch the football.
That thing that everybody was talking about, yeah, I didn't watch it.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
I just had to make things up when people were asking me about it. Like, did you watch the game? And then I used my film head to pull out quotes from like the IT crowd and was like, oh yeah, did you see that ludicrous display last night? Problem is with Arsenal is they always walk it on, but that wasn't relevant. So I had to just say England. But yeah, I had to tell a few porcupines because it's just, I feel like a fraud if I did watch it because it just isn't my bag. But that's fine, because if I don't watch it, that's an extra seat at a table for someone who does care about football. And that's the kind of giving person I am. There you go.
There we are. Well, Emma doesn't like sport. I like sport, but I'm not a big fan of sport films. But Emma loves sport films. I think we got a thing here. I don't know
if I love sport films. That is one thing I would say. I don't know if I would love sport films.
Oh, okay.
I just thought that, yeah, like there's some that I like. There's some that I don't like. As we were discussing earlier, Ali, not my film. Bit rubbish. Rocky, no interest.
No interest, never seen it.
Never seen it. Never seen it.
No.
Won't see it.
No,
I
probably
bluntly
not.
refuse to see it.
Got to a point now where it's just refusal. Have you seen Rocky? No, I'm not gonna.
No, you will not make me watch that film. I'm joking. I probably will watch it at some point. But no, I think that there are some really good. I think there's some really good sport-related films. Although what I would always say is that very rarely is it about the sport, and it's what's going on.
It's
what's
around
going on
the
in the
sport.
changing room.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
So Emma's got three. You have three sport films.
I do.
Yes, I've got.
I do have 3 films.
3 films.
This is where we
films.
slightly differ, though, because I have 3 works of sort of cinematic fiction based on true stories,
And
whereas
I have 3 documentaries on sport, which are films, and one technically isn't a film. It won at the Oscars, so I'm guessing you can imagine what it is. So I like the real life stuff. I like the stories behind the people who took part in the story. I find their life background interesting. I find them interesting as people. So I think that's where I come at it with sport. That's my angle. I like the people. I think the stories are interesting.
I agree. I would have, as we were saying earlier, had a couple of sporting documentaries I feel like I should have now brought to the table, because the stories are really interesting. But what I would argue is that for mine, the stories are still interesting, but the people are just much nicer to look at. There you go.
Okay, so go on then.
There you go.
Who's the first film that's nice to look at?
Number one. Find me a person who disagrees with this. 2010's The Fighter, by David O. Russell, featuring Marky Mark himself, Mark Wahlberg. Absolutely beautiful man. Christian Bale, who I can probably miss if I'm honest, and Amy Adams. So for those who haven't seen The Fighter, it's the story of two boxing brothers. So Dickie Eklund, who was very much kind of a man of the kind of boxing championships of years gone, I suppose. He had some notoriety with Sugar Ray Leonard, but now was very much kind of in the descent of his career. And when I say descent, I mean it very literally, because the man is now addicted to crack. Then his brother is Mickey Ward, who's played by Mark Wahlberg. I should say, sorry, Dickie is played by Christian Bale in probably one of the greatest performances of Christian Bale's career. But Mickey Ward, played by Mark Wahlberg, he's kind of more up and coming in his career. So he's on his road to boxing championship. I think it's like the lightweight title, and sort of as he becomes more established and more recognized for his talents, he has to distance himself further and further from his brother, and all of the issues that come along with his brother, and actually his family as well. So as we just said, although it has boxing in the film, it's not a film about boxing necessarily. Mickey's kind of the fall guy, I guess, so he's always paid to lose the fights, and very much is like living in his brother's shadow, even though his brother is very much, his career is 100% over, and he's kind of been tasked with helping Mickey kind of get into shape and kind of get ready for the championships. But sadly, because of his addictions, he just becomes unreliable, and you just sort of see him let him down more than anything else. Christian Bale, obviously, as Dickie, he won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor, but that was one of the films that he was in between one of the Batmans, so he'd like put on quite a lot of weight to be Batman, and then it was one of the drops, so he dropped like 30 pounds to play the role of Dickie. And he's like, I mean, he does the look well. Like, he's so gaunt in his face, and he spent a lot of time with a real life person as well.
Yeah,
and
I think I've seen an interview with him. An interview with him. I think when he was like as him sort of thing, like as his character, and I think they met each other. I do remember watching that or seeing something like that.
Yeah, they like it. That's the one thing that I did really like about this film, is that it really works hard to be true to the story, and the real life Dickie and Mickey are very much present in the back, behind the cameras all the way through filming. So Mark Wahlberg did all of his own stunts. So he did all of the boxing for the film, because of course he did, because it's Mark Wahlberg, and that guy oozes
such
amazing.
A popular thing to do now.
Oh, he's so it's so popular, but also Mark Wahlberg, and he apart from obviously doing his own stunts, he used the same trainer that Mickey Ward used, and Mickey Ward was on set every day, and he actually even lived in Mark Wahlberg's house for a long period of time, just to make sure that everything he was doing was like super spot on. But yeah, like as I said, for me, I think it's not a film about boxing. It's a film about, you know, two brothers literally, you know, on the seesaw of life, I guess. One is very much has been up high and is on his way down, and the other one is very much, you know, working his way up from the bottom. I think the sad part is, you know, part of the film, they're being interviewed by a documentary film crew, and actually one of the camera guys from the documentary film crew made a real life documentary about the older brother Dickie and his descent into crack. But Dickie very much thinks it's a documentary that's being made about his comeback, but it's not. It's a documentary about his fall from grace. And yeah, the kind of disillusionment that you see in Dickie is just really heartbreaking. And it is absolutely not surprising that he won the Oscar. I think it was very, very well deserved. He just really, really delivers such a standout performance. But yeah. Have you seen the film?
I've seen the fight. Yeah, I went to cinema watched it. Yeah. I did. Again, yeah, it's about the stories. It's about the family, like you said. It's about family, isn't it? It's about like you say, the brothers, how he has to get away from the brother, and Dickie and that. Yeah, I have seen it. I enjoyed it, if I remember rightly. I might actually go back and watch it now because I don't remember it as well as like what you said there. So I think I might go back and watch it.
I think the thing is as well is like I don't know if it was just me, but I hated his family. Like like every like inch of my body was like repulsed by them, and kind of, you know, Mickey is like very much the underdog, and he's got all this talent and all this potential, but he's very much not. Yeah, he's expected to live in the shadow of his brother, and he wants to. I think he idolizes him to a certain point, but then, you know, his mum is just very cruel at points, and just, no one puts Marky Mark in the corner, not in this house.
No, so, I think that's like a common theme as well within. I think certainly in America, it's about you have to take care of your family if you've made it, and how much your family can be an anchor on you, and how much they can take and take and take, when really it's, you know, it can be a positive influence, but sometimes it can be such a negative. I think in terms of the fight, it kind of was a negative, wasn't it? They really were just living off Marky Mark and his upcoming fame, because obviously Dickie was on his way out, so they needed something else. So,
very much on his way out. Sad guy. But so that was my first film, The Fighter. The Fighter.
So my first film is the Brian Fogel documentary, Icarus.
Icarus.
Which is actually out on Netflix. I think it was it says 2017 on IMDb, but I'm sure it was 2019 on Netflix, so I don't know quite sure when it was out, but I'm pretty sure it says 2019.
Have just come to Netflix a bit later, and they've for some reason put a later date on it.
Yeah, so 2017 or 19, which is what it was. It tells the story of the very vast and wide Russian doping scandal, or state-sponsored doping scandal, which Brian kind of fell into, I think is probably the best way of saying it. He sort of found a guy who knew everything about what was going on, because he was trying to do something else, and sort of fell into this story. So Brian was, or is, you know, he's a big cycling fan, and he loved Lance Armstrong, and everything about Lance Armstrong, and he idolised Lance Armstrong growing up, and was absolutely crushed when he found out that Lance had doped his way to 7 Tour de France victories, and obviously got stripped of all of his Tour de France victories, and set out on a doping program of his own, because he wanted to find out how easy it was to get away with doping, and how he was able to get away with it for so long after so many denials. And also trying to find out what the benefits were of doping. Like, did it really make you as good as somebody who wasn't doping? So what he did is he went to do the toughest amateur cycling tour in Europe, which was in Switzerland. And he did it 1 year without doping. And he trained his ass off, basically. He really got super fit.
Is that an official term?
As an official term, because it made me scared. Bloody hell. Anyway, yeah, he trained his ass off to get 13th place at this tour out of something like 230, 50, whatever many people it was. So he did really well. He was nearly in the top 10. But what he was saying is he could never touch these top 10 cyclists. He was never, ever, ever, ever going to get anywhere near these super fit athletes at the top. And that kind of like rang bells. And he said, like, why are they so good? Why are they better than me? So what he did, he set out to go back next year, but he was going to do it doped. So what he did, he set out a doping plan, but he wanted to do it properly. He wanted to do it professionally. So he got in touch with one guy who was WADA's head of doping, asked him if he would help him do this, which is incredible. He said, at the time, he said, yeah, I'll do it. But then he sort of quickly got cold feet because he didn't want to, I think, sort of like reveal the secrets as to what was actually happening. But then put him in touch with Gregory Rodchenkov, which was Russia's WADA doping agent, head of doping, who agreed that he would do it. And when he was asked, this head chief guy, Brian asked him, said, why would he do it and you won't? And he said, I can't say that on screen because I like him too much. So I think he knew what he was doing and he knew what was going on. Or that's the impression that I got anyway. And while they were doing this doping regime, he did agree to do it and he was seeing him through. But at the time, WADA was investigating the Russian athletes anyway through it was a German TV documentary. Came out and released all this information about how they did it and how they did this. So this was sort of running congruently at the time. Anyway, Brian finished the course, went back in the race, and he actually did worse in the race the second time, even though he was doped up. There was a few mechanical issues, but he finished like 23rd out of. So he went backwards, and part of that was the impression that I got is some of it is just natural ability and natural skill, and I think doping just sort of topped maybe Lance up or topped these other athletes up, just giving that extra bit edge. But they were already great, so that was the impression I got. But because he's got in touch with Gregory, then the whole Russian thing kicked off in a big way, and you got to hear some incredible stories as to what the Russians were doing to circumvent the training, how they were getting away with it and what they were doing. They had KGB officers literally cracking tops of urine samples, taking them off to a secret room, bringing them back. It blew my mind watching it because it's just unbelievable. And it's the level of denial that the Russians had that, no, everything was fine, no, we didn't do this. Well, clearly you did do it. You did do it. But they were like, still to this day, they would deny that, actually, no, we didn't do that. The level, I'm not doing it. You have to go and watch. Look, with the films that I'm going to say, you just have to go and watch them because I'm not going to do it justice in this short segment because you just have to go and see the level of conspiracy that was involved in it and how high it went. It went as high as Putin, or that is what the film sort of suggested. Now, whether it did or not, you're never going to find out.
No.
But Gregory is now on the run in America. It got that bad and that far that he went to the New York Times. He released his story to them. All the documentation, it went to everybody. It went to WADA. It went to the Athletic Commission. It went to the IOC. It went to everyone that had this information, and it's just unbelievable some of the stuff that the IOC in particular they let them compete in 2016, I think it was, even though they were clearly doping. They said, no, we'll let some of them compete, not all of them. But it's an incredible film, incredible piece of documentary. Again, I think with documentaries, you are getting it from a single point of view, like Brian's point of view and Gregory's point of view, that you're only getting their side of the story. But I can't imagine that it's going to be, watching it, you're never going to get the Russian side of the story, and I don't think it's going to be much different even if you got the truth. I don't think.
Yeah, I think the Russian side of the story would be like, just a blank screen of them
Yeah,
saying,
yeah.
no,
It's
this
like,
isn't
no, we
true.
didn't do
We
this.
did nothing.
No, we
None
did
of this
nothing.
stuff.
I mean, the level of brainwashness that was going on, I don't even know if that's a word, but there was a
We've just made it a
presentation.
word.
I just made up a word. They'd been banned from the track and field, and then like they sort of had like a press conference where this very prominent athlete was like, we didn't do anything, we didn't know anything about it. Next to Putin, who was sat there, and she started crying, and the level of sheer denial that she must have been going through, or upset that they're not going to take part, or whatever it was just unbelievable. It is an unbelievable story, and it was. I don't think if you've seen that in the news reports and you remember it, go and watch the film to know a bit more of the background behind it. Because part of me is like, yeah, Brian did sort of fall into this, but I'm glad he kind of did, because I don't think the story would have been published as well as it was if it wasn't for the fact that he was doing this sort of little thing in the grand scheme of things, like trying to find out how doping worked and how he got away with it, and the chemicals and the stuff, the science behind it, and then he stumbled onto something so far bigger. And it's an unbelievable film. Absolutely, go and watch it. I would recommend it. It's on Netflix. It's a Netflix film, so it's going to be on there for a long time. So yeah, definitely go and see it if you've not seen it already.
I agree. I think it's a fab film. It reminded me, we were talking about Fire Fest earlier, and I think if you've seen that, it's that same level of you can't believe the next thing you're about to hear, and what? Okay, fine, and then you sort of overcome that sort of disbelief only to be whacked in the face with something even more preposterous or ridiculous. But it's a really interesting film. My partner knows a lot about doping, not because he does it. He definitely doesn't do doping.
He won that cycling tournament, I remember his name.
My partner, Lance Armstrong, he doesn't know anything about doping, but no, my partner's very much into sports, and so I always hear about it through him, kind of every new doping scandal that's kind of going on. But I found, as a layman, as I would refer to myself, it was such an interesting and well constructed story that it made it really accessible. Like I could follow it really easily, even though I was aghast at most points. I
think Gregory, as well as a person, as a character, I will call him a character because he is absolutely a character.
Yeah.
I don't know if he realised that he was doing anything wrong. I think he sort of released it, but didn't think he was doing anything. I don't know if he thought he was doing anything wrong at the time. Maybe he does now. Obviously, he's on the run because of it. But I never got the impression that he thought he was doing anything sort of wrong.
Well, I completely agree. And I also
a lot of ambiguity with him on his position.
But then, to me, it made sense that I don't think any of them think that they're doing anything wrong.
No.
And that's why you had that woman sort of in such despair, because I might be wrong. Like I said, I'm sure there's people who know a lot more about sporting and doping and all of that than I do. But part of me feels like that the cover up, I guess, without sounding like an absolutely crazy conspiracy theorist, is it runs so deep into the kind of the culture of it that they don't even realize that what they're doing is illegal, and maybe they're not told.
I wouldn't call it a cover up. I'd just call it denial. I think it's not covered up. It's just that they're just not admitting that they did anything wrong. It's just denial.
If you admit it, then that is a good tactic, right? Don't admit it, because if you admit it, then
it's like that Sopranos episode where Tony tells what's his face, don't say sorry to Johnny Sack. So as soon as you say sorry, that's it. And he says,
never apologize.
Don't apologize. You did nothing.
Never apologize. It's like if you ever have a car accident, they always say never apologize, never take the blame, because it might not be your fault. And that's I don't know. I just feel like that's their approach. Is like, until there's hard evidence to prove that, without a shadow of a doubt, that they definitely did do it, all the while they just say we didn't.
Yeah.
It's, you know, you can never be sure. Even though they definitely did do it. Very little question about that.
Very much so. So, your next film.
So my next film, my second film, is Ron Howard film.
Ron Howard.
From 2000. Ron Howard from 2013, called Rush. And I think, actually, I want to caveat all of the films that I am going to be talking about today, because they are not films that I was keen to watch when I first sat down in front of the TV to watch them. But maybe because I was so disinterested, my interest was piqued even higher. But yeah, Rush is the sort of story of Niki Lauda and James Hunt. So Niki Lauda is played by Daniel Bruhl, who is my absolute lovely, lovely German crush. And Chris Hemsworth plays James Hunt. I'm not bothered about Chris Hemsworth. Someone else can have Chris Hemsworth. I will have Daniel Bruhl. I'll have Daniel Bruhl. Thank you very much. Love Daniel. So it's very much, Rush is set against the backdrop of the very rugged but golden years, I suppose you could call them, of Formula One racing in the 70s. And it portrays the two stories of the English playboy, James Hunt, and the Austrian-born Niki Lauda. They were kind of pitched as like rivals, and whether or not, you know, that was actually the extent of their rivalry was probably played up quite a lot for the film. But I think that they were kind of pushed against each other because they were complete polar opposites of each other. You know, Niki Lauda was very kind of considered, very methodical. He very much kind of trained to be a Formula One driver, whereas James Hunt was, I guess, what they would consider more like raw talent. So he just had a natural ability to drive very well and drove very fast, but very much enjoyed the lavish lifestyle that being one of the best Formula One racers in the 70s afforded. So as I say, these kind of, they're two like life stories. I say it's life stories, it's not their whole life, it's just kind of a small segment of their careers. But they very much, though they're kind of running parallel to each other, they're both very, very polar to each other. And so you meet, you know, you follow them through their like trials, tribulations, their wins, their loses. And then near the end of the film, you hit the 1976 Grand Prix in Germany, which is one of the more famous Grand Prix because it was the Grand Prix that Niki Lauda had that very, very awful accident in that caused him to have such significant and permanent scarring. And it talks a little bit about that particular race. The weather conditions were really, really terrible that day, and James Hunt was very much, I think it came down to kind of a vote amongst the drivers, like do we race, do we not race? And Niki Lauda, being very, very practical, very methodical, said that they should pull the race, said that the weather conditions were just too poor, that it would be risking it, the risk didn't outweigh the positives. So he was very much on the don't do it side, whereas James Hunt was like, yeah, let's do it, because he's very, you know, James Hunt, you know, very sadly died, and is not really able to comment too much on how he would have, you know, or why he acted a certain way. But in the film, it's very much portrayed that he did it because he was a racing car driver for the thrill of it. Like, he was good at it, and he liked driving fast, and he liked having his life on the edge, I guess, or living his life on the edge. So in the end, the vote goes in the way of racing, and then it very, very quickly turns sour. But yeah, it's a brilliant film. I really enjoyed it. Again, it's a film that's based on Formula One driving, but isn't actually about Formula One driving. And I think really does depict this kind of, it's just like a two-way street, right? Nikki's on one and James is on the other, and you kind of see them constantly, like you would on a race car track, like constantly like sort of in line with each other, slowly like overtaking and undertaking each other, and pitching off against each other. But the editing is beautifully done. I mean, so much so that it won a BAFTA for it that year. And it helps create that sense of kind of speed, I guess, without them being able to really truly race in a traditional format. They actually, I was reading something that they actually drove Formula 3 cars, because there is just no way that they're going to let a film crew run off with multi-million-pound Formula 1 cars.
No.
So they made them race Formula 3 cars, but then they just put like the bodywork of a Formula 1 car over the top, just to kind of make it feel a bit more authentic, I guess. But yeah, I was trying to think what else was. Oh, do you know who did, Mark? Do you know who did soundtrack to Rush?
Oh, John Williams.
No, John Williams, madman.
Piffle. Hans Zimmer.
Yes, Hans Zimmer.
Really
Hans Zimmer did do it, but that's it's not a film that I've watched and thought that's a bloody good soundtrack. Whereas, there are other films that you watch, like Schindler's List, you watch even Back to the Future, and you can sit down and be like, that's incredible. The soundtrack is really, really stands out. And it wasn't something that I thought of. And when I watched it again not that long ago, I thought, actually, it is so good. It's so good, but it's done in such a way that you don't even notice it. It just embeds itself into the story and into the film. And that's, I guess, why Hans Zimmer is probably one of the best of the best when it comes to composers. But yeah, I really, really liked it. Probably not one for the kids, if I'm honest. There are some boobies in it and some rude words. Yeah,
oh,
no. I know those two things that
Damn.
every person under the age of 18 is banned from.
Boobies and bad words.
Boobies and bad words. But it's it's one of those films. I think if you're for a Friday night, you've got a pizza, or just want to chill out. Maybe you're self-isolating.
Maybe you've been pinged.
Maybe if you've been pinged, grab a pizza and go watch Rush, because it's very climactic. It's very enjoyable to watch. It's really well acted, mainly by Daniel Bruhl, but Chris Hemsworth is pretty good as well. I still don't particularly like his English accent, but fine. But yeah, I would really recommend it. I really enjoyed it.
Okay then. I've not seen it.
Have you seen it? You've not seen it?
Not seen it.
I would suggest watching it.
I think that's on Netflix again. I think that is on Netflix.
It is on Netflix at the moment, and it'll be available to rent on Prime if it's not free on Prime. But it's a nice, easy watch.
Sometimes that's all you don't need nothing to. It is what it is. What it is.
It is what it is.
Exactly. And it is what it is.
That's okay. There is nothing wrong. We don't all have to sit and watch very complex, arduous films with great meaning and purpose. Sometimes you can just watch a film that is what it is.
It is what it is.
It is what it is.
So my next film is keeping in the same theme of Formula One. Yes, set a bit later than Hunt and Niki Lauda. It's the documentary Senna. Unbelievable film. So
good.
It's so good. I'm going to start with this though. I remember back in the day when Top Gear was popular and a thing. Jeremy Clarkson was relevant. Yes, I mean Jeremy Clarkson is a bit of a big idiot. Yeah, we all know that. But give him credit where credit's due. He does do good, serious documentary work and good, serious journalistic documentary work. And they did a film on Top Gear about Senna. and it was only a 10-minute shot, but I was completely like aghast and hooked on Senna as a person, a character, as a driver. I thought it was incredible, and the story, even in that 10 minutes, was just a brilliant portrayal of the man. And Clarkson then went on to say, "Well, this is only 10 minutes of it. I've seen Senna, the documentary. It was going to be shown at Cannes that year, or maybe a year after, because it's 2010 when it was released. So it could have been. It was around the same time. He said it's brilliant. As soon as it's out, go and watch it." So we did, and it is a brilliant, brilliant film. I mean, it's set during the 10 years. It's the portion where he's a Formula One driver from his first season to sadly his last season, and it starts where he's racing the Monaco Grand Prix, and he's racing for Lotus, which isn't a very good car at the time, but he's a very, very good driver, and you can see his potential straight away. It's the Monaco Grand Prix. Alan Prost is winning, but it's pouring down with rain, and Prost is like, "Yeah, it's raining. We've got to cancel. We've got to cancel it. We've got to shut it down. It is literally raining cats and dogs." Not what it's doing right now, but it's raining. Eventually, they're like, yeah, we're going to stop the race. So Prost slows down, but Senna doesn't, and Senna picks him at the line, and it's an unbelievable. Prost's face was, thunder, basically. Following year,
Prost was cross.
He was cross. Prost was cross. So the following year, I think Senna is still at Lotus, but he's getting better. He's getting good. He's getting more notoriety. He's winning a few more races, but he's not in a very good car. And then the year after that, he does get to go to race for McLaren, where his teammate is Alan Prost. Now, for the same way that Lauda and Hunt were pitched together as two rivals, Prost and Senna were absolutely picked together as two rivals in very much every sense of the word. They're racing for the same team. They're in very similar cars, but they're two very similar people. Senna is very much a bit risk-free sort of character. He'll just race. He's not interested in the outside noise or anything like that. He's just all about the racing. Where Prost, he's happy to get involved with the politics, and he's happy to make friends and rub shoulders and know who to know and know about people, and he loves it. He's all about it, where Senna isn't. Now, I think it was that season or the season after, that came back to bite him, where they were come to the last race in Japan, and Senna needed to win to take the title to the last race. If he didn't win, then Prost won the title. And they came together on one of the corners. Senna was coming on the inside, and Prost sort of turned in on him. Prost was out, but Senna continued to race. And at the end of it, he came back and he actually won the race. But with all the politicking going on, and the FIA president being French as well, who Prost liked, and they liked each other, new rules were suddenly put in place where Senna was actually disqualified and suspended from racing because he went through the chicane the wrong way, or he raced through the chicane, he cut the corner, he wasn't allowed, he wasn't supposed to. So Senna's place was lost, and Prost then won the title. Fast forward a year at the same race in the same circumstances, but only the difference is that Senna was leading the title and Prost needed to win. So in this instance, before the race was going on, qualifying happened. Senna was on pole, but they put Senna onto the dirty side of the track and put Prost on the clean side of the track, which was wrong because Senna was on pole. He earned the right to be on the clean side, the racing side of the line, or the racing line. He wasn't given that opportunity. Prost was. And when the race started, Prost shot off. He was in the lead. Senna sort of came back, but when it got to like the first or second corner, Senna just took him out. They called it like a bit of a racing incident, but clearly Senna just took him out. It was like, yeah, you did it to me last year, I'm going to do it to you this year. Screw you, mister. So then Senna went on to win the title. But it really did delve into Senna's character as a person. He was very, very faith. Believed in God very heavily, believed in his faith. Didn't go as far to believe that God protected him and he could do what he wanted. He sort of knew that as his career went on and on and on, that actually, God can't protect him all the time, sort of thing. So he did kind of get wiser. He did get kind of wiser to the politics, a wiser driver. He was beloved in Brazil. I mean, my God, the man he was a god in Brazil. It was unbelievable. He was just so popular. He was absolutely beloved. Women loved him. Women adored him. He was so charismatic and charming with all there were certain clips with the reporters and that, the pit girls and the sideline girl reporters and that, and how cheeky he was with them. And, he loved it. He loved the race. And, I mean, the documentary is told from the perspective of just a few key people. Ron Dennis, who was his mechanic. He was the team president at McLaren. He still is now. He's still in McLaren. It was told by Alan Prost from his perspective, which I found very, very interesting. It was also like an ESPN commentator, another Brazilian commentator, and there was a couple of Sid Watkins, who was F1's chief doctor or medical physician at the time, during when Senna was racing. So very key perspectives. So you did kind of get a balanced mix of what Senna's personality was like. Also Frank Williams as well. He was on there towards the end of his career, or towards the end of his life. He did move teams to Williams because what was happening is cars were getting more electronically modified, whereas they were more doing all the work than the driver was doing. And Senna it kind of went against his code, really, in a strange way of saying it, that it wasn't the driver that was driving the car, it was the mechanic. It was like the electrical parts that were driving the car. And that meant that they were just so much faster than he was. They kind of thought, well, that was kind of a bit of cheating, because it wasn't the man behind the steering wheel that was winning the races. It was sort of like the car itself. You kind of had like a disadvantage. But because Senna wanted to win, he wanted the best car, so he then went to Williams, where sadly that year they decided to take away all the electronic parts. Now the cars are that fast and went that quick that they needed traction control to stop the wheels spinning and the other electronic components. They needed them on the cars because they're so fast, they're so quick. There's only so much that a man can control within the car itself. And the last bit of the portion of the film is sadly where it was the Imola weekend, the San Marino Grand Prix, which he was having problems with the car beforehand. He was sort of spinning off a few times. He wasn't comfortable in the car. And it got to the Imola weekend, and Rubens Barrichello at practice crashed the car. He literally flew into the air. There was scenes of that crash. And at qualifying, Paul Ratzenberger, he died. And throughout this, you're seeing Senna's sort of, should we do this? I don't know. For some reason, I don't think today's racing would have gone ahead. I just don't see it happening. I was surprised, actually, that it went ahead. And sadly, the race did go ahead, and Senna sadly died. Crashed into the wall in what was described as a freak accident. The suspension load, if it was 6 inches high, it would have missed him. 6 inches lower, it would have missed him. It just hit him where it hit him, and sadly he was killed. And sadly he was the last. Well, not sadly. I don't know how to rephrase that one, but he was the last sadly person who died in Grand Prix from injuries. So ever since then, they've really focused on security and the safety of the drivers, and it's took sadly one person dying, Senna, to really, focus on the safety of the drivers and the cars. And it's just an incredible film. Really delved into the man as a person and as a competitor, and his desire to win. And it was just a brilliant film. And I watched it back yesterday, and I had a little tear. I was like, "Oh my God, you knew what was coming."
If I was going to say, anyone that gets to the end of that film and doesn't have at least a tear is a total monster. Like, I knew what was coming. I don't follow Formula One, but I have family that do, and I know very much about Aunt Senna, so I knew what was coming. But still, when I got to the end, I sobbed my heart out because, like you say, I would argue that Senna's death sparked a real change in the approach to driver safety.
Yeah.
Lots of people had died before him, but I feel like it was really apparent that Senna's death was so preventable if they just pulled the race. you know,
It's a shame that Paul Ratzenberger, if Senna would have survived, would they have done the same for Ratzenberger? Probably not, because Senna was Senna, sort of thing,
yeah,
which is a bit of a shame, really, to say, but it's probably true.
yeah.
But
I
Senna was
agree.
always, or seemed to in the film, very safety conscious anyway. He seemed to really put the drivers first and really wanted. He didn't like the politics, and there was a few films where he was in like the driver control room and they were getting the briefing, and he was arguing the toss with head official of race day and saying, "Why are you doing this? This is stupid. You can't put tyres there. If you put tyres there, then tyres are going to go flying. People are going to go flying. Just put some cones there. You don't need that there." So that was like one instance that I can remember, and yeah, just. He was only 34 when he died, so he was so young, and he'd have won more championships, absolutely. Whether he'd have won as many as he... I don't know, would he have won more than what Schumacher won? Possibly. Would Schumacher have won as many as he would have won if Ayrton was still alive? Possibly not, I don't know.
Yeah.
But 34 is just an unbelievable character, an unbelievable man, an unbelievable just competitor and person, and just a really, really sad loss. And yeah, he'd have been unbelievable. But yeah, if you haven't seen Senna again, please do go and watch it. The man's unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And like I say, he only spanned that 10 years that he was driving. So you really do get a keen sense of what he was like.
Yeah, I agree. It's a great film. It is a great film. Well, we're doing a very, very, very sharp left turn now to a very, very different film. So my third film is Craig Gillespie or Gillespie. Oh, how do you pronounce his surname? Gillespie.
Oh,
Craig Gillespie.
I thought it was going to be some Russian.
No, why can I not pronounce that? Well, anyway, there we go. So yeah, I, Tonya, which came out in 2017. It's a story, probably have heard of it. I think lots of people have heard this the true story of Tonya Harding. So Tonya was a kind of competitive figure skater from what they would call the wrong side of Portland. So
wrong side of Portland.
I don't know. Apparently so. The wrong side of Portland. So she was, being brought up by her mother, who's played by the amazing Alison Janney, to be this, big kind of competitive figure skater. Sorry, not finger skater. What's a finger skater? A figure skater. But Tonya is very much ostracized from the ice skating community. She's not cut from the right cloth. She's not got the techniques. I think, the precision that her competitors or fellow competitors have, but she's got, as we used earlier when we were talking about James Hunt, she has got like a real raw talent, but she works hard for it. She works really, really hard. So you meet, Tonya Harding, who's played by Margot Robbie, as she's sort of raising her or moving her way up the ice skating championships, managed by a very abusive group of people, or surrounded by an abusive group of people who never seem to have her best intentions at heart, and rather always are operating on their own agenda. Although Tonya was very much ostracized, as I said, from the ice skating community, and from everyone around her as well. She's, a very tragic figure, I think, in lots of ways. She went on to become ice skating championship as like at a national level, as a world championship, but then she also was an Olympian as well, and competed against multiple other ice skaters in the Winter Olympics. But sadly, these are things that Tonya Harding is not really known for. What Tonya Harding is known for is for I I don't know how best to describe this, but her involvement with the mafia style hit. I'm going to use the word hit, even though no one died, someone's legs just got a bit mushed. Of one of her fellow competitors, Nancy Kerrigan, who before the 1994 Winter Olympics, her legs were bashed in with a big baseball bat by a Mark's face is hilarious right now. Here's all of the emotion.
What? This is ice skating. What?
This is ice skating. See, people think they're like rugby is hard, but like for men. Don't fudge with women on ice skates because they will break your legs with baseball bats.
Baseball bat.
If you throw a baseball really hard, maybe it would have the same effect. I don't know.
Throw a lot of baseball.
Tonya's association or affiliation with the crime that cost Nancy Kerrigan that chance to compete. She went on and had a career afterwards. Luckily, they didn't seriously, they obviously traumatized the poor woman, but she didn't, lose her career over it. However, Tonya did. So they worked out that Tonya and associates of hers, let's say, had a real clear motive, and they linked them to the crime because they were a bit like when we were talking about Fargo, a little bit inept. And they did their best, bless them, but they're a bit useless. And so she kind of resulted in that it was a kind of lifelong ban from skating. So she was never allowed to skate again. But Margot Robbie's performance of Tonya Harding is really, I think, underestimated. We all know Margot Robbie as being this incredibly beautiful human being who everyone just sort of gawps at. Well, it feels like, she really kind of went out of her way to play this character true to form. And Tonya was a beautiful woman, but was not Margot Robbie beautiful, I suppose you could argue. And she didn't come from such a well-cut cloth, I suppose you could say, but she really incorporates that, and she does this very clever thing with her face. She kind of like scrunches it up, and when you're watching her on camera, it's a really hard thing to describe, but it just looks awful. Like, I've never seen Margot Robbie look unattractive, but she's managed to do it quite well. And the real life Tonya Harding had a big part in the film. She met with Margot Robbie a couple of times before they were filming and in pre-production, and was obviously interviewed as part of the film. And apparently the only reason she kind of agreed to get involved was because she was like, well, what else have I got to lose? I have nothing. And she really has nothing now as well. That's the sad thing. She's just lost everything. And this, Nancy Kerrigan, not to say like this Nancy, this woman who had her poor legs.
Who is she?
No, not at all. She was completely a victim, and I feel very, very terrible for her. But, I feel like Tonya was very much a victim as well. I'm not saying what she did was right, because it definitely wasn't in any way, shape or form, but she was definitely manipulated and physically and psychologically abused, and she was a product of her environment, and she made bad decisions that cost her career. The thing that I really liked, so I didn't realise that Margot Robbie does a lot of the skating in the film. So though she's not a professional ice skater, unlike Alison Jennery, who was training to be a professional skater when she was growing up, Margot actually doesn't have any I guess, official training, and just trained really, really hard for this film. So a lot of the skating she did herself. There is a couple of CGI moments in the film. So one of them, Tonya Harding was really famous for doing a move, which I think might be banned now. I might be wrong, but it's called a triple axel, and it's literally just like, I'm guessing whatever you're imagining now, that's what it is. And
I don't know if
they
you're
really
imagining the same thing that I'm imagining.
Really? Okay,
not a
fine.
clue.
You surprised me. So it's just like, it's just go Google it. I'm not going to explain it because I will explain it wrong. I don't know anything about ice skating.
Good
but
answer.
It's a very, very, very complex and tricky move. And obviously, even with all of her rigorous training, there was no way that Margot Robbie was going to be able to do this move, because there's very few skaters in the whole world that can do this move. So that was the only part. I say the only part. There's one of the parts that they had to CGI, and I will say, you can tell like straight away, like it's just really, it's the face, right? It's always the face that gives it away. And it's just for a split second, but it just pulls you out very quickly. But it doesn't take away from, the whole film being brilliant. I thought it was really a standout performance from Margot Robbie, and one that I don't know if she won an Oscar. I know that, or she won an award for it. I know that Alison did, who played obviously Tonya's mum, but I think she won too. I think she won an Oscar, and I think she won a Golden Globe. But yeah, she was incredible. I have a lot of time for Alison Janney anyway. It's Janie, isn't it? I don't know why I always call her January, but it's Alison Janney, or Janie.
Okay. Yeah.
She was in West Wing, and she's been in lots of stuff. Janie. But her performance in that film is phenomenal. She is hard and cold and manipulative and scathing and ruthless and everything that you don't look for in a mother. But yeah, she actually did a knockout performance in that, so props. She definitely deserved everything that she got in terms of recognition. But yeah, it's a really great, I thought it was something a little bit different in terms of the style of film. Cinematically, it's, I think, quite bright and beautiful. There are definitely parts that remind me a bit of the sort of stylisticness of Wes Anderson, just in the like brightness of the pastels. But yeah, I'm guessing you've never seen I, Tonya?
No, but I've got a lot more appreciation for Torval and Dean. My God.
Oh, poor Torval and Dean. When's their documentary coming out?
Yeah. When are they doing one?
When I was a kid, I always used to confuse Torval and Dean with Pearl and Dean, who were the people that did the adverts at the cinema. I thought that was run by, I thought that Pearl and Dean was just Torval and Dean's advertising company. I never could separate the two when I was younger.
No.
I would argue there was probably not much point in separating the two. But yeah, it's a real love story to ice skating. And I think it's such a tragic story, from Tonya Harding's perspective, and from lots of people in that film. Nancy as well. Like, she lost out on the chance to, really kind of do amazing things. So definitely, I would definitely watch it. Add it to your watch list. Probably, again, I always say this, probably not one for the kids, on account of someone being violently battered in the legs by a baseball bat and some masked hoodlums. But yeah.
Masked hoodlums.
Masked hoodlums. I'm showing my age. You
hoodlums. You people. You masked hoodlums. Hey, okie. So I'm going to cheat a little, only a little bit. This did win an Oscar, so technically it's sort of film, but it is a long 6.5 hour film if you do sit there and watch it. back to back to back to back to back, which I'm not sure I'd recommend. Give it over a couple of days. Each episode's an hour and a half, so yeah.
I'd call it a challenge.
I've got a challenge. I've done the challenge 3 times, so it's doable. Yeah, it is good. So my last film or choice or really documentary is the O.J. Simpson Made in America story. Have you seen it?
Yes. Yeah. I've seen both. I think there's only 2 Made in America stories, isn't there? Which is the O.J. Simpson one and the story of Versace. Giovanni Versace.
Yeah. Well, they did
really brilliant.
They did do a Cuba Gooding Jr. Did you ever see that? They did an O.J. like a true crime thing. John Travolta was one of the lawyers and stuff. It was okay.
Okay.
Yeah, it was okay. So I'll try my best to do this some justice because, like I say, it is 6.5 hours long and it does go down some tangents, I suppose. But really, once you follow it, when you watch and you follow it all the way through, you do get where it was going and how they brought it back. So the film or the documentary follows O.J. Simpson's career as a professional, well, from college all the way through to NFL, to post the NFL, to sadly when he clearly murdered Nicole Brown. Clearly did it. The Crown of the Century, the Trial of the Century, and then after he was found not guilty. Yes, found not guilty, and then subsequently,
if the glove doesn't fit, you must acquit. If the glove doesn't
fit, yeah, exactly. So after that, and then his subsequent then imprisonment for a crime that he did commit, but was probably over sentenced for the crime that he did commit. It wasn't really. So the film portrays it goes a few ways. So it does deal with OJ's, like I say, career and him as a person and whatnot, and how successful he was as a college athlete at the start. And really what the film sort of portrayed was that he was institutionalized by the system in which he was playing college football. So he was at SC, which is University of South California, which was a predominantly sort of like white institute. So what the film tried to say was, or did show, was that he was sort of institutionalized in this white world, but he was a black man in a white world. Mm-hmm. And that he loved the limelight that being, a big college star on a white campus brought, and he loved it, absolutely adored it. He then went on to the NFL and had a very, very successful NFL career with the Buffalo Bills. He rushed for 2,000 yards one year. I think he did it a couple of years. Hugely successful. Really, really loved it again. Was kind of obsessed with the fame and the notoriety that came with it. Loved the limelight again. Sort of identified himself more with the white world than he did with the black world. Then after his NFL career finished, he went into more show business. He was kind of a successful film star, I think. He was in the Naked Gun films, I think.
Yeah, he was in, I was going to say
he was in a fair few films. He was in a sci-fi film. What was that? One that was supposed to be on like Mars. It was set on Mars or something, or it was like a film that was supposed to be set on Mars. Anyway, he was in that. He did a broadcasting career as well, sideline for Monday Night Football or Sunday Night Football, one of the two. But as that's running alongside it, you're getting these stories about how Los Angeles and and how black men and women were being treated, how the LA riots, all of this outside influences on what eventually was the crime of the trial of the century. And then the last sort of like 2 parts of middle 2 parts of the documentary, you do see the trial of the century and what went behind it and all the how a case works. And it was like one of the first trials, and also the very famous Bronco chase down the eye, whatever it was.
Oh gosh, yeah. Wasn't that one of the first kind of?
Yeah, I think that was like the second episode. I think he was on the run.
Oh, yeah.
I'm gonna kill myself.
I meant in terms of like full kind of coverage of a car, a high speed.
Yes,
in action, being covered by, because that was half the issue, is half the helicopters in the sky were actually news reporters and not police officers.
Yeah, and they were following, and they found him first before him. He was in his white Bronco, traveling down whatever road, and what a very, 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 very famous thing. And then obviously they turned himself in, and then the trial started, and then you get all this just story and information. You just get it thrown at you, but in a good way that you can follow it, and how his trial lawyers then manipulated the way that actually he was bringing him back into the black community, even though he sort of shunned them away in some respect, that he didn't identify himself as that in any way, really. How they turned the table and brought him back into the black community because of everything that had gone before, the Rodney King incident, the whole race riots, everything that had gone on before. They brought it to the front, portrayed him as this, this man who had a crime, who committed a crime clearly, but it was sort of framed as though he was framed, he was set up, he was this and that.
Yeah.
Even though he did some horrendous things to Nicole, absolutely horrendous. You see behind the curtain, so to speak, of what he was like in his private life. And I was watching an episode today just to refresh my mind, and he was talking about his domestic abuse towards Nicole, and the jury just didn't care. Like, they got it, but they didn't care. And they actually interviewed the jurors as well, and they said, one of them just said, look, if you're a woman and you're in that situation and you have the opportunity to get out and you don't, well, then she had no sympathy for her, which I thought was even shocking.
Stomach churning.
It is. It absolutely is. And and eventually like you mentioned just then, that if the glove fits, if the glove doesn't fit, then he'll quit. And the trial was unbelievable. I think it went on for nearly 6 months, and
it was in every way possible. It was a performance. Johnny Cochran really did give. He was very clever and a very accomplished sort of lawyer. And
he was a civil rights lawyer before he was a criminal trial lawyer, and he was amazing in what he did and how he portrayed O.J. Simpson as this sort of sympathetic figure.
Definitely got the impression though that there was more in it for Johnny Cochran than just the acquittal for O.J. This was about his career and his progression in that kind of civil rights community as a lawyer, and he made up some really catchy slogans.
He did, and
everyone knows you can't say no to a slogan.
No.
But what I found really interesting, like you hinted at earlier, was the complexities of the kind of the system, I guess. That kind of criminal trial system. Like, I knew that you got to pick your jury, which I, as a British person, find mad, because you can obviously play against biases. But I didn't realise that what they did to his house when, before the jurors went round there, and
they changed all the pictures to all these African statues.
African sculptures, put up pictures of his mum, took down the picture, the self-portrait of him, on a throne or something ridiculous, took down the sculpture that he had of himself in the house and replaced it with, like you say, kind of what's kind of perceived to be as African style arts, and made him seem like a very family-centric human being, which he really wasn't.
He really wasn't. He was so self-centered, narcissist, unbelievably nasty, evil character behind the scene. I mean, he was portrayed as he could be very personable, and it was sort of like a switch with him. Some of the story, I mean, it's told from a lot of different angles, a lot of different testimonies, a lot of different interviews, and there's a lot of sad interviews as well in there, like people who thought that he was his friend and that he'd do things for them. It's in a totally different side to him. Heard things that they didn't think possible, and they just couldn't believe it. And they still can't believe it to this day that this man did what he did, or got off with what he did. But it's 6.5 hours long. It's on Disney Disney Plus now. It's on Stars if you've got Disney Plus, so you can go and watch it. I would highly recommend watching it. Like I said, we talked about it for 10 minutes. Doesn't even scratch the surface. Absolutely doesn't even. The whole trial, the episodes on the trial is fascinating beyond belief. It really is. What they did in that trial, like you said, Cochrane and the prosecution lawyers they didn't come across well. Let's put it that way.
No.
They didn't come across well. And they came across as... I watched the episode today where they did put the glove on, and they asked him to put the glove on. They were like, don't do it. Don't do it. Just do not ask them to do it. And they had an argument, and they did ask him to do it. And yeah, it backfired in a big way.
It really backfired. Also, there's very few people that if they're asked to put on a glove that fits them perfectly well, they can't make the glove not fit.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and wasn't a big part of it also that he took a certain type of medication.
Oh, yeah, arthritis in his
hands. It's arthritis, right? So
he didn't take his medication for 2 weeks.
Yeah. So that would have caused some swelling. But yeah, I agree. I thought it was a really, really interesting documentary. And like you say, just the insight into the absolute circus that is, or that I feel seems to be the American justice system it just seems surreal, absolutely surreal.
And like I say, it's not just really about OJ. Yes, it's called OJ Made in America because, yeah, he was made in a system in a way in America, I suppose, but it's all the stuff around it as well, which led to this culmination of him getting away with it, and Black America going, yeah, we won one, when actually I don't think you did.
It's weird but that, I suppose, it just feeds all into that rhetoric, doesn't it?
It does.
That, it's us. This isn't about OJ as a man. This is about Black America. And it's not. It's about OJ as a man who probably killed his girlfriend. But it was very easy to do that, as you say, with the backdrop of, the Rodney King beatings and all of the LA riots that pursued after that. And it was very easy to create that narrative when it was, and still is, a terrible environment for, African Americans. So though now you said it, I totally do remember when you were saying about John Travolta playing. I was like, no, but I do remember now. I have watched that. That was good. Did you not enjoy it so much?
No, I didn't enjoy it so much. I think it's I think I'd watched the documentary first and then watch this. But it brought us the Kardashians. There
we go. You're welcome.
You're welcome, world. Yes, the
Kardashians. Bruce is it? What's her dad's name? Was it Bruce Jenner? No.
No, that's not.
Bruce Kardashian?
Yeah, I think so. He was a Kardashian,
isn't he? Yeah, he was the Kardashian, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was a lawyer.
He has a lot to answer for.
He did. Yeah, he did. So that's it. There's our take on sporty films / documentaries.
Sporty sportsman films.
Yes, we're going to end now because we're a puddle.
I feel like it may have increased in temperature by about 100 degrees since we started. And this idea that we've been talking about physical exercise has just made it worse.
It's warm. Got the door closed and the windows closed.
Oh, warm. Why don't we have air conditioning here?
We're British.
We are British. We have necked curtains and carpets. We don't need your air conditioning. I'll drink tea to make my body warmer than it is outside, and therefore I will be cooler.
Yes, no, tea makes you cooler. It cools you down. Did you not know that?
I didn't know that, and
I never got that.
Still don't know that. I don't think it's a thing. I'm just going to go stick my head in a freezer, the old-fashioned way.
So till next time, when we may or may not have a episode on a certain TV series, it may or may not be The Sopranos.
Spoiler alert.
We might just talk a full episode about the opening theme tune, just how good that is.
Oh, that is such a good theme tune. There is nothing about The Sopranos that I dislike. Actually, wait, I correct that. I don't like the fact that it ended.
Everything has to end. Everything has to end, just like this episode, because it's too hot. So,
it is. Bye.
Yeah, bye. Right.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. We're melting. Goodbye. Have a nice week. See you soon. Bye-bye.